whatever Zelensky's actual motives are, whether they're personal, political, the sword of Damocles over his head, his policy is a disaster for his country and does not reflect Ukrainian desires for peace.
Recently, Jeffrey Sachs went on Judging Freedom, that's Andrew Napolitano's podcast, and talked about the shifting dynamics in the war in Ukraine and what it will take to secure a peace there, and why, in fact, some of Trump's rhetoric may be actually counterintuitive to that goal, or if taken charitably, may help it. So let's watch and let's react.
Can we realistically expect that the Witkoff negotiations with President Putin will bear fruit?
I'm optimistic. I was in Moscow. I had a chance to speak with the officials as well. They are optimistic as well that there is a real possibility. Of course, what's happened is President Trump has made some very correct statements about the origins of the war and the reasons that the war continued and uselessly continued. So he's on the right track, and presumably he's being well advised on that by Mr. Witkoff. But around the Western alliance, if you could call it that, is all of the pushback of the deep state. We had a statement by President Biden, apparently, I didn't see the details, saying that this is appeasement. Shame if President Biden said this. He was disastrous.
Yeah, isn't it crazy that everyone that wants to secure peace, engage in diplomacy and negotiations, is an appeaser, is a Churchill, is a Chamberlain-like appeaser? It's just crazy. It's the same rhetoric that's always used to support the wars. The only pushback I'd give to Sachs is that the Trump rhetoric about this war is somewhat good, but sometimes he assumes the same mainstream narrative that it was under Biden that the war started, when in fact, it really was a long series of events, even starting in the 90s. And I think the most pivotal moment was the 2014 Maidan coup, where the U.S. assisted in the overthrow of a democratically elected Ukrainian government under Yanukovych, where it started. So by saying that this started, this is Biden's war under which it started, it assumes way too much of the corporate narrative.
In his mismanagement of relations with Russia that led to this war. So shame if he's talking about appeasement, because he made terrible, terrible blunders, and his team was awful. But we're also hearing statements that make no sense from the British. I never expect better, unfortunately, because they live in a fantasy world of a past empire.
Yeah, Keir Starmer is out there talking about how much more should be pledged to Ukraine. And if the U.S. gets out of the whole mess, flirting with using troops on the ground there, it's all smoke. And it's reflective of more the 18th century than it is the 21st century. We can take that all with a grain of salt. Same with what van der Leyen has to say about it. Same with Macron.
We're not hearing sensible things from France and from Germany when we need to, which is that there is a way to end this war now. It's not about appeasement. It's about stopping the mass deaths and the risk of nuclear war that continue in Ukraine because of what was a 30-year, absolutely wrong-headed campaign by the United States, principally with allies in Europe, to push American military bases up to Russian borders and to try to weaken or actually break apart Russia. This was a long-term plan, spelled out, again, in detail, Judge, because if you know where to look, you can find all of this laid out from the earliest days of 1993, 1997, 2008, 2014. This is a long-term plan. President Trump is trying to end this terrible idea, which has led probably to more than 1 million Ukrainian deaths or gravely wounded, and huge numbers of deaths and wounded every day. He's sensibly trying to end this. But then we have the continued hardliners. So that's where the real uncertainty comes from, is the deep state.
Yeah, I mostly agree with Sachs, though sometimes Trump's rhetoric and actions don't really lead me to conclude that he wants an immediate end to this, because all he has to do within 24 hours is withdraw all aid from Ukraine, and the rest will follow. A peace would have to happen, Europe would step away, and there'd have to be a peace on Zelensky's part. So, I don't know. Talking about how Russia wants all of Ukraine, that's just echoing the mainstream narrative, the same kind of stuff you hear from Zelensky, CNN, Keir Starmer, Macron, and that is not the way to put leverage on a peace. As long as the U.S. is a belligerent in this war, bankrolling this war, sending U.S. intelligence and resources into this war, Russia is not going to be willing to negotiate. Now, I'm glad he opened up negotiations, but we're just at a stalemate as long as the U.S. continues to aid it.
We are taking a poll of those who are watching now, and it's a huge number of people in what we call the chat room. It's a very simple question. Can Putin trust Trump? So if you're watching now, I encourage you to answer yes or no. We'll reveal the answer while Professor Sachs is still on air with us. So I don't know if you saw this because of your travels, but here's what President Trump said on Sunday morning. I guess it was actually taped a day or two before that on Meet the Press about how much of Ukraine President Putin wants to capture. Chris, cut number 10.
Ukraine, there's been discussions they will have to give up some of the land.
Russia will have to give up all of Ukraine because that's what they want.
All of Ukraine, meaning they wouldn't keep any of the land that they've claimed?
Russia would have to give up all of Ukraine because what Russia wants is all of Ukraine. And if I didn't get involved, they would be fighting right now for all of Ukraine. Russia doesn't want the strip that they have now. Russia wants all of Ukraine. And if it weren't me, they would keep going.
How to get a handle on that? I don't know if it's ignorance, lobbying by the people you've just been talking about, the neocons that planned and plotted this going back to the 90s, or if it's some sort of a political maneuver. He knows how this is going to end, and he'll take credit for the parts of Ukraine that did not become Russia.
Well,
how do you explain this?
Let me give an interpretation that I'm not sure, but let me give an interpretation that may be what President Trump is saying. What I think is true, and maybe this is what he means, if there is no peace, Russia will continue to advance in Ukraine, and it will continue to take more territory. It will cross the Dnieper. It would probably try to claim Odessa and other areas. It said if there's no peace, it's not going to settle for the Ukrainian regime as it is today, which Russia regards, understandably, as completely Russophobic and ready to strike inside Russia and so forth. So what President Trump may be saying, not to us, but to the Ukrainians, is, look, either you take what I am putting on the table, which is you keep your sovereignty, you keep your state, but you acknowledge some territorial change, because that is the reality of the battlefield after these 3 years of war, or you risk losing everything. I think the message, if I understand it, that President Trump was saying in that interview was to the Ukrainians. He's very frustrated. Zelensky is totally recklessly irresponsible, which he can be by virtue of the fact that he rules with martial law.
But does he have a sort of Damocles over his head held by the fanatical nationalists that surround him?
Oh, I would think so. I would think that maybe he's playing his own game of personal survival or personal power or other very personal ideas. But he's got millions and millions of people depending on the decision to end the war. And his point is, no, I'm not going to end anything. We demand all of the territory, irrespective of what has happened during the last 11 years now. Because remember, contrary to the American propaganda, which is repeated endlessly, this war started in February 2014. It did not start in February 2022. There's a long history to it. Ukraine had several off-ramps where it would have kept all of its territory. Then after the coup, which brought this Ukrainian regime to power, a coup where the United States played a decisive role in February 2014, the Russian government took back Crimea before it fell into NATO hands, which was the intention. But Ukraine would not have lost any territory in eastern Ukraine.
Yeah, Sachs is totally right here. We know that there was the Minsk agreement between Russia and Ukraine, whereupon the Donbas provinces would have been made relatively autonomous, but they would not be explicitly Russian. Russia didn't even maintain any land claims to the Donbas until after they had invaded. So Zelensky could have taken that deal at Istanbul much better than he can ever hope to secure now at that point. Now, Sachs made the argument that Trump's rhetoric about Russia wanting to take all of Ukraine was kind of a warning signal to Zelensky and to the Ukrainians. That may be so. It's pretty charitable and glass half full when it comes to Trump. But if you're going to use that as leverage, it could backfire too. It could make you be viewed as even more villainous to Russia when you're trying to solve this thing. So ultimately, I think that this is not a winning strategy. It's not to try to say the same things that CNN said, the same things that Biden said, that all the warmongers and neocons said, that Rubio said, that Mike Waltz said, in order to solve this situation. It's just to withdraw U.S. aid. In that, I totally agree with Douglas McGregor, who's been beating this drum day after day. Now, Sachs is totally right about the causes of this conflict, the impetus, the long history of it. There's no one better on it than Jeffrey Sachs, but I think he's viewing Trump a little favorably here when it comes to his gambit to try to end it. I don't think it lies in doing the same thing and saying the same things that Biden did and that CNN does and continues to do. So let me know what you guys have to say, though, down below in the comments, because I want to know, do you think that this is a winning strategy for Trump? To end the war, send a warning sign to Zelensky so that he has to capitulate and end up in a peace agreement. Let me know in the comments below. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more inflation, no more debt, and no more empire. Take it easy, guys. Like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you next time.